number of video lectures and some audio talks. If there's anyone here who's giving a talk who does not want it on the YouTube site, be sure to let Mira know, and that's fine. But Paul and Mira do need permission, so so the request is it okay? If you don't think it's okay, which is fine, please let Mira know, and so that she's waving yes. And now we get the good stuff from Chris Buck.
Thanks, Bill. Okay. So, thanks to the organisers for accepting this symposium, and thanks to them as well for organising such an amazing conference. It's been, I'm ashamed to say, 14 years since I last attended this conference, so shame on me, but and I clearly missed out on a lot in intervening time. But it's been fantastic to come here to Portugal and catch up with a lot of old friends. So we're going to talk in this symposium this morning about ecological dynamics, which I'll explain in a second, and its relationship with sport expertise. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with the term ecological dynamics, there's just a few key principles I'd like to talk about briefly before I allow the first speaker to come up and do a much better job than I can at explaining what ecological dynamics means for his research. So, many of you will be familiar with the idea of constraints, and the idea that constraints are boundary variables which shape how degrees of freedom in a dynamical movement system are configured. So, this is a key idea for our research. We're trying to identify some of the key constraints in different sports and physical activities so that we can help practitioners to better understand their sport, and also try to make some good decisions, I guess, about how to structure their practice. And the second key principle, which again I'm sure is very familiar to all of us, is this idea that information emerges from the performer-environment relationship, and that can regulate action directly. So, again, the key concept here that surprisingly many practitioners don't know explicitly, but also have a feeling maybe influencing their learners' behaviour, is to try and study this relationship and not to try and break down this very important performer-environment understanding. And the third key principle, which has been around for some time, but I think really has only become very obvious to us in the last few years, is this idea of representative task design, which several speakers have spoken about over the course of the last 4 days. And Brunswick was perhaps among the first to sort of really bring this to our attention and make the point that it's very important when you're trying to sample this performer-environment relationship to try and keep it intact, to preserve these key subtleties within the performer-environment relationship. So that's something, again, which is a common theme or thread, I think, through the presentations you'll hear in the next hour or so. And if you want to read more about this, because some of you, like me, will have a long trip home on the plane, then there's a couple of papers I'd recommend to you. One of which is quite early, several years ago now, Jai. I don't know how that has happened, but in 2007, the paper on nonlinear pedagogy, which Jai talked about in the first presentation, came about. And more recently, Ludovic Seifert, myself and Keith have written a paper in Sports Medicine which talks about expert movement systems and this ecological dynamics approach. So if you're not familiar with that, then that might be something to have a look at. I've got electronic copies if anyone wants one. So, moving on to this morning's presentations. We have four presenters over the next hour or so. And first of all, we'll have Jai Chow talking about tennis. Someone mentioned Andy Murray and his success over the weekend, so I couldn't resist putting this slide up. And I'm sure it will be not long before another Brit, whether it's him or someone else, manages to take the Wimbledon title. So he's going to be talking to you about how to teach a tennis task, and particularly looking at this idea of nonlinear pedagogy and explaining what that is. Then we have John Kumar, fresh out of his PhD examination just a few weeks ago, so well done to John. And he's going to be talking about his research on degeneracy and the environmental constraint in swimming. And then we have Ludovic Seifert and his colleagues, one of which is attempting to be a climber here on the left-hand side, whereas Ludovic is showing him how it's actually done on the right-hand side, exhibiting what we're trying to understand in our group as metastability. So we'll talk a little bit about that during rock climbing. And then when all the good stuff's done, I'm going to get up and talk, and that will be about something which many of you will have experienced if you were on the boat last night. And the idea of affordance perception in an open water environment is quite interesting to me. So there's a couple of situations which may present affordances to do very different things in open water. So without further ado, I don't want to take up any more of their time, and I will pass it across to Jai for the first presentation.